Hello students, we are now going to talk about what is a pseudocode and why it is used. So if you try to search up Google and if you ask what is pseudocode, it will simply tell you, if you go to Wikipedia, it will simply tell you pseudocode is a way of describing an algorithm. Okay, but here the focus is on describing the logic of the algorithm using an common language like English. So it uses a special kind of English called as structured English, meaning there is a particular way of writing that particular English. Now, the reason why pseudocode is used in a lot of places, even in textbooks, you will see as you go to the higher studies, is because the focus of the pseudocode is on the logic of the algorithm rather than the programming language you're really worrying about. So this helps in the participation or the understanding of even non-technical people in what is the logic of the implementation. Now, one thing you will notice that pseudocode really has no standard way of writing. Even if you look at different books, 10 different books, you will find 10 different ways in which pseudocode is written. But one thing you will find common is there's a lot of English like language description used to describe the details of the implementation. And certain mathematical symbols are used to make it more clear. Some common mathematical symbols, not symbols which are rarely used. You may find this discussion a little abstract right now, but once we do one or two examples of pseudocode, I would request you to come back to this video and try to look at what exactly is this pseudocode description. Now, the reason why pseudocode is written is it is to make the logic easier for a person to understand, a non-technical or anybody person to a human being to understand, rather than a normal programming language. In a normal programming language, the focus is on for the computer to understand. In a pseudocode, the focus is for the human being or the person to understand. Therefore, when we write a pseudocode is not written like any programming language which we are going to study. It is written in a very English like manner which you can read and you can easily understand what this particular program or logic intends to do. It describes the key ideas of the implementation. Now, in pseudocode, you will not, like say example, if you're writing algorithms, if you're writing a program, you will declare variables, you will use semicolon, full stop, a lot of the syntax in a programming language. But in a pseudocode, you will not use any technical kind of a jargon because you want everybody to understand just by reading it. So we are going to avoid variable declarations, any code which looks like C language or Fortran or COBOL. Now, as I told you earlier, pseudocode is very widely used in a lot of textbooks and in documentation, because when a documentation is written, the documentation is not written for people who know C or Fortran or COBOL. It is written for people who know just any programming language. So by documenting it in an English like manner, anybody can understand the broad logic of the problem solving process. So it is used in the planning of computer programs or development, or it is an English like description of a problem solving process or the algorithmic process. Now you may wonder if there is any standard for algorithms, for the pseudocode. Not really. Every textbook and every person has his own personal style of writing the pseudocode. There's really no standard. Okay, so everybody has his own way of writing. But in our way, we'll try to keep it as much as English like, and we will try to match it closely with the steps of the algorithm, so it becomes easy to compare an algorithm with the pseudocode, and that's the way you're able to compare them. Okay, now, so before we go here, so let's try to take a look here. So as I said here, it is used for sketching out the structure of the program before the actual coding takes place. Now coming to the standards for pseudocode. As such, as I already told you, no such standard exists for the pseudocode. So everybody has their own standards and own way of writing. Now all this discussion where I brought it up, this is all from taken up from Wikipedia. So this is not, this credit goes to Wikipedia for giving me this particular piece of information. Now going back to the discussion about standards, okay, so if I, as I told you, it's used in textbooks, okay, and each individual person has a way of writing, each textbook has a way of doing it. Now the purpose of writing a pseudocode, it is meant to be understood and read by human beings or people, not by the computer. A program is written so that a computer understands, whereas a pseudocode is written so that a human being or a person understand. There is clearly no universal standard. But for the purpose of this course, we will follow a certain style. Once you see a few examples, you will get a clear idea of what that particular style is. So to just wind up this discussion, a pseudocode is an English-like structured description of an algorithm. There is no standards for a pseudocode. Most textbooks and documentation discuss the logic in an English-like manner, which we will be following. Critical or important part, it is meant to be understood by human beings and not by the computer. Clearly no universal standard. We do not have details like a programming language where we show the full stop, semicolon, called as the syntax, variable declaration. All those details are not there. We are just broadly focused on the logic. So pseudocode is a algorithmic description of the algorithm, or the description of the logic of the algorithm in an English like structured language.